Hi, folks. You were Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. I was looking at a few news articles about the people movements around the world, and looking at, for example, over the last 9 or 10 months or so, approximately 500,000 Afghanis who've left Afghanistan and gone to Pakistan have been evicted by the Pakistani government. So they've been rounded up at gunpoint. Anybody gives attitude or lip, they get beaten up or even killed is the word around, or that's what the United Nations human rights agitators are claiming anyway. But I don't doubt it. I mean, it's a brutal place, a brutal part of the world. Life expectancy is low. A lot of these people, especially the rural villages, they live effectively in the Stone Age. It's something that Western people don't seem to grasp too well. But anyway, something in the order of 500,000 who've gone from Afghanistan into Pakistan have been evicted and pushed back into Afghanistan. The same goes for other places in the region where Afghanis have gone, parts of Iran and so on, and they've been pushed back into Afghanistan as well. So depending on whose numbers you want to believe, something in the order of 2 million Afghanis have been evicted from the country surrounding Afghanistan, where they've allegedly fled as refugees or asylum seekers or whatever you want to call it, and they've been pushed back into Afghanistan. So, for goodness sakes, why is the international media not in uproar about this? Why aren't we seeing CNN in the United States, Netflix? Why aren't they all picking up how these evil brown people are mistreating other brown people? The same could be said in parts of Africa where, in the case of various, endless civil wars or tribal strife, people have moved into neighbouring countries and they've been evicted as well. And why aren't we seeing screaming headlines about that? Evil, black, racist Nazis persecute. Why aren't we seeing? Well, we're not. We see nothing about it. In fact, you have to go looking for it, and you have to really make an effort to find those sorts of stories. And there's not many of them around yet. By comparison, if even one brown or black person is being evicted by a white country such as Britain or I don't know, Australia, US, whatever, Mexican, but then it's a screaming international headline about an evil fascist Nazi. It's Hitler! Hitler was doing this! It's Hitler! The Nazis swastika fascist! And so why is the same outrage, confected though it is for propaganda purposes, why is the same outrage not being applied to these other places? Why is Pakistan not being brutally denounced, in the United Nations, with much fuming and hand waving? Why aren't they being denounced for the evilness, evil brown people, evil Islamic people? So, but it's not happening. It's only bad when white people do it, but apparently it's, irrelevant if brown people do it to other brown people. If black people do it to other black people, then that's fine too. But if white people do it to non-white people, oh, holy fuck, Hitler on steroids. Now, I got a sort of an insight into this. I'm always interested in talking to people to say, well, why did you come to Australia or the West, the West generally? So you're Islamic, you're reasonably devout and pious you lead or have led your only understanding of the universe and the world is a tribal lifestyle outside of the cities. You've got no really, you've never even had a flushing toilet or running water in the house or the ability to flick a light switch and have the light come on. The public transport. There are so many things that you can't even comprehend. And yet you choose to come to a country, the first world white country, Christian country, that is so alien, so completely and totally alien to everything you know, everything you understand, why do you choose to do that? Now, I've asked people that you would consider closer to the peasant end of the scale and people at the more sophisticated end of the scale, and the answers actually are very similar, but delivered from different perspectives, but similar nonetheless. So one guy is a doctor from the Middle East, and one of the more advanced of the Middle East countries. He's been a city dweller all his life. His parents were college lecturers. He became a doctor, and lived. His parents were not pious at all, or they weren't devout in any Islamic sense. They went along with what they had to go along with. But the guy's sister or somebody was mother or someone was arrested by the morality police for not properly wearing a headscarf, and apparently had to appear before some tribunal and beg forgiveness and all this sort of stuff. And he said, well, look, the doctor guy explained, he said, even though I'm Islamic and all the countries around me are Islamic, the countries around me, most of them speak the same language. I only did a few years of English at school, and that was optional. And, so English was a very sort of minimal second language to me. But I didn't want to move to these other countries because their economies are even less sophisticated than the one I was in. The job opportunities are very few. It's very tribal, they're crony economies in the tribalistic sense. So if you want to get a job as a doctor that pays reasonably well, then those jobs are gifted out to friends and relatives and so on. You're often required to pay corruption sort of backhander money to the people that gave you the job or enabled you or didn't stop you from getting it, and there's no such thing as merit and this sort of stuff. You can lose your job at any time if you offend some religious official, so you have to be very careful. Even if your cousin commits some sort of religious ideological crime, like not wearing the hijab to specification or something like that, that could be enough to cause you to lose your job or to be shunned in some way. There'll be shopkeepers that are quietly told, don't serve Sula because she's the wife or sister or niece, whatever, of that guy who's committed. So he says that those are the sorts of things. And he said on top of that, he said it's very tribal. So if I go to another Islamic country that speaks the same language, that actually doesn't mean much because of the tribalism. I might as well come from outer space. So it doesn't allow me to fit in nicely or neatly or quietly or anything like that. And again, the job opportunities are fewer. So he says the only place I can go, assuming I'm not going to stay there, the only place I can go where they do have a relatively open, welcoming sort of society where jobs can still be acquired on some form of merit, where there's not the tribalism and so on and so forth. There's not the religious moral police running around jumping on you for not wearing your clothing to specification, that sort of thing. He said the only place you can do that is the West. They're the only place in the world that will, where this tribalism and so on, this strange morality doesn't exist. So he said that was the reason. The doctor guy says that's the reason that I chose to come to the West. He said in addition to that, the only job opportunities really that are open, again coming back to on any form of non-tribalism and non-corrupt merit, is also in the West. Now, so he concedes at almost every level the West is a better society and a much better place for him to come, a place where he wants his children to grow up and so on. At the same time, however, he despises the West for its lack of morality. How women walk around showing flesh and this sort of thing. So it still jars against his sort of, even though you wouldn't describe him as devout, still jars against his sense of morality coming from that Islamic background. he resents being an outsider. He resents having to come to another country, all these sorts of things. And that bitterness is taken out on the white population. He believes white people are being racist towards him, even though he chooses not to associate with the local Anglo population, and so on and so on. It just goes on and on. So he comes to the West because it's so much better in every way. And Indians, by the way, say pretty much the same thing. But he still believes himself to be morally and culturally and spiritually superior to everybody in the West. And this causes a sense of inner conflict in him that isn't resolved. He doesn't want to become an Australian. Well, he wants his kids to grow up in this sort of society. It's only because they're free from the constraints of the society he came from, but he doesn't want them to become Australian. He wants them to marry other Middle Easterners and Arabs and people from the Islamic faith and so on. So it's a real contradiction. So he believes other Islamic countries, even in the region, are not feasible, viable options for him to move to. Now coming now to more at the peasant end of the scale, it's much the same thing, although not with that same sort of sophistication of an urban dwelling doctor guy whose parents were also urban dwelling academics and so on, and professional people. This is a guy, the goat herder, if you like. He's the goat herder from in the living in the Stone Age, but he just backed the wrong faction in some sort of local tribal war, and there was a price on his head. So he managed through United Nations agitators, stirrers, and troublemakers to get a lifeline thrown to him. People die for that sort of stuff, or they've got which relative do you want to kill? That'll be the price you pay for your treachery and not supporting us and that sort of stuff. So it's a very tribal sort of system, and very Stone Age and very basic. But he manages to get out of the country with his relatives and out of Afghanistan. And so, again, the blood feuds of the Islamic thing and the tribalism, he's never going to be accepted anywhere. He's not going to be able to integrate, as he sees it, anywhere in the... now, he tried it in Pakistan and, had to go at Bangladesh. And bear in mind, you think Pakistan and Bangladesh are poorer than they are, but they're still not as poor as Afghanistan. So... his view is that and I think a lot of this would be in coaching. I doubt he's got an IQ above 80, but his perception, and certainly given the advice he's getting, he's just not going to be accepted and not going to be able to accomplish anything or achieve anything or have anything to do with the people and the countries around him. The tribalism, even though they've got the same language, the same religion, and all that sort of stuff, the tribalism would cause him to be rejected wherever he goes. And so the only place that isn't going to reject him is the West. But the culture shock of coming to the West is something that I doubt he'll ever recover from, and he's passed on to his children who either came here as a young age or were born here in the West. So the West is really the only, as these people said, the West is the only option for these people, or they deal with the local conditions and circumstances that they've contributed to, gone along with, being part of in that part of the world. So it's a poor part of the world living in the Stone Age with Stone Age type solutions to social issues and tribal issues, but that's their situation there. You transplant these people to the West, they just can't deal with it. The doctor guy to some extent can, because he gets a job as a doctor, but the Afghani or the Middle Eastern peasant, the third world peasant, you can go however you like, whether it be Pakistan, but they don't fit in. They don't assimilate. They don't integrate. They bitterly resent the world around them, as in the world in the West they've come to. So that brings us back to the core of this essay, at least. Why is it that international outrage is immediate, spontaneous, and universal when white countries want to evict brown or black people, when other brown or black countries evict other black or brown people? It passes without notice. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit. there's even cases where third world peasants attempt to rush a border area, and the soldiers, the border guards, fire on them, killing many of them. Those stories don't seem to. Well, why is not an international outrage there? It's only international outrage when white countries do the evicting, and the white countries do the evicting for the most reasonable causes, such as murder and goodness knows what in terms of law breaking. But it's still evil only when white people do the evicting. Anyone else does it? No, who cares? So this is sort of gives away, I think, the globalist game here. Not that we're already, we weren't aware of it. Is that the intent to import mass third world peasants into the white first world West is something that the globalists would rather die 1,000 deaths before they allow that to be stopped and prevented. Hence the endless attacks on President Trump and his attempt, or successful attempts, largely successful attempts, to close the US border to illegals and to conduct evictions. But given current trends, even in the 4 years of President Trump's tenure as president, it's possible but unlikely they'll be able to deport and evict more illegals than Biden and his cronies and goons brought in over the previous 4 years. Therefore, it's accomplished almost very little. The minute the Republicans are out of office, the nanosecond they're out of office, the globalist-controlled Democrats will just open the spigots again, and masses of millions will flood into the US. I mean, there's no shortage of demand. There are billions of poor people in the third world who would love to come to the first world and get their hands on all the freebies and goodies. There are billions there, so that's never going to stop. But this is a realization that the hypocrisy of these propagandas. So wherever you see the propaganda about it's inhumane to evict brown and black people who've arrived illegally in the West, or falsified documents, whatever, that it's an outrage and it's human rights and something. Why aren't they screaming about the human rights when brown countries and black countries are doing the evicting? But of course they don't, and that hypocrisy needs to be called out and needs to be pointed to. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.